If you thought we were done talking about Ashley Young on this channel, we're not. And genuinely, I thought we was. I thought the time to be talking about him was over. But for those uninitiated, Ashley Young has been given an interview to Sky Sports Transfer Show last night talking about the state of Manchester United under Rúben Amorim. Sky Sports have clipped up a couple of pieces of it, of which I was tagged in it quite a lot last night. So I'm going to give my reaction to it. I couldn't resist giving my reaction to it, especially after the amount of people that tagged me in it. Now, in the segment, Young talks about everything from the post-Fergie decline to the transfer policy. He weighs in on the likes of Rashford and Sancho and even McTominay. So I actually think it's worth diving into what has been said by Ashley Young and whether I agree or disagree with it, and you might be surprised. So, on the post-Fergie decline, didn't see it coming. Now, Young reflected on that period after Sir Alex Ferguson's retirement. He said nobody at the club felt the decline was going to be as drastic as it was once the boss left. He said that when Ferguson retired, I don't think as soon as he left that things were going to go the way that they have gone. He said that it was always going to be tough for whoever followed. Obviously, David Moyes did last just 9 months in the job after that. But he says he was surprised by how far United fell. As a player in that squad, he witnessed firsthand the drop in standards. If a senior player like him didn't anticipate a certain collapse, it probably underlines just how unprepared the club was for life after Sir Alex. And that obviously sets the stage for where we are now in 2025. He also highlights the chaos of that era, from Moyes' short tenure, the revolving door of managers that came following that. Quite ironic, considering he was part of a lot of the underperformance as captain in those post-Fergie teams. Why didn't the players see it coming? Why didn't they do more to stop the rot? Like, at what point, I say this all the time, people have this sort of envisagement of managers being this messiah-style character that fixes everything. It's not the case. You know, the players have such important roles in this themselves. On to Rúben Amorim, naturally from one manager to the current manager. This is the thing that got the headlines. Now, it's quite contradictory what he says, actually. And the quote that's doing the rounds is, "No more excuses now or never." In the context of the wider video, it doesn't really necessarily come across like that. He effectively sticks it down him as a bit as a challenge, but he says you've got to put a marker down as soon as you start this season. I don't think anyone can give him any more excuses. It's now or never, really, to be honest. That's exactly what he said. And that came on the back of him talking about having patience. And that's when I said, that's the bit that I didn't... He says you've got to have patience with him. And then the next sentence is, you've got to set your marker down as soon as you start this season. I don't think anyone can give him any more excuses. Now, and obviously he talks about him not wanting to come in during the time that he did. Asking the manager to deliver immediately. Now, to an extent, I agree that there's not going to be any more excuses. But there are excuses. And not necessarily excuses either. I don't know if excuses is the right word. Mitigations might be a better word. The whole world knew that Manchester United lacked goals last season. This squad's by far worse than any squad that Ashley Young ever played in, especially when it comes to goals and goal threat. Signing one attacking player doesn't bridge the gap between a team that's able to score goals and where we currently are. So, like I said, the contradiction in the comments about Amorim needing time, knows that nobody knows how many transfer windows it'll take, which is what I agree with. And then the same breath basically says it's now or never. Well, which is it? You know, does the manager get time, or does he have to be an instant hit coming out of the gate this season? You know, the grace period that you have, that half a season free hit, we're now at a full pre-season. Our expectation is going to be sky high again. We came 15th last season. You know, I don't want to lower standards, but I would temper expectations. You know, the manager's not exactly had a blank checkbook of bringing in whoever he can bring in. And I think the way Ashley Young has just spoke there perfectly encapsulates the shit show, not just at the club, but in the fan base. Everyone preaching patience and then throwing the toys out of the pram the second we don't get every single thing that we want. It's mental. Next up, then, he talks on transfer policy. This was quite an interesting section, actually, because of his take on United's transfer strategy. The interviewer pointed out that United were targeting players with Premier League experience. Obviously, Mateus Cunha is already in the mix, and Brian Mbeumo, we hope we can get over the line ideally this week before we go away. But he's saying the club have got to be learning lessons from the past few seasons because they've not been the most successful. He said the need for players who know the league, which I think is what Ineos are trying to bring in. According to Ashley Young, Sir Alex wanted to sign players with Premier League experience and thoroughly researched personalities. And he goes on to say the boss knew everything: players' families, friends, eating, sleeping habits. He knew what players would fit into a squad, which ones were hungry, they worked hard, who had the desire to be winners. And he called Sir Alex a genius for that approach. So something I've often thought is the recruitment has misfired spectacularly in the past few years. You know, we've spent so much money, we've overspent on so many players, we've identified targets, put a value associated with them, and then gone right over the ball with that. You know, we've signed so many flops, so many misfits. I mean, even someone mentioned the other day, or I said, Anthony and Sancho, there's £150 million there on two players that's played the same position. And someone says, oh, Sancho's effective on the left. Cool. You had Marcus Rashford and Anthony Martial when you signed him. So, again, you're not really making the case to sign him at the time that you signed him. We signed him to play on the right, right? Whether or not he wanted to play on the left or whatever, he was signed to play on the right. You know, and then, you know, like Young's saying, Premier League proven signings, or wanting Premier League proven signings, does feel like a bit of a critique of some of the players that we've had in recent years that have struggled to adapt. Essentially advocating for the old way of scouting the right players. United often used to buy Premier League proven players, whether that was Eric Cantona, whether that was Roy Keane, whether that was Wayne Rooney, Michael Carrick, Berbatov, Young himself. You know, there's so many players that we've brought in that had Premier League experience. And I touched on this the other day, and someone was like, well, what about Vidic? Yeah, no one's saying that you can't get good players, but haven't we signed like 4 players from Serbia, 5 players from Serbia? Technically, only one of them has been a success. So you can't really call Serbia a great recruiting ground for us. Similar with Monaco. We've had a few players from Monaco. How many of them do you truly consider a success? Would you consider Anthony Martial a success? Would you consider ever a success? I would hope you do, but that's not the case for every single signing. It's not the case for every single signing for the Premier League either. I just think that it has a largely decent success rate. Talking about Marcus Rashford, obviously looks like he's on his way out of Old Trafford. His number taken away from him is a pretty good indicator, I think. We haven't signed anywhere near enough attacking players to allow him to go, but it seems that he doesn't figure in Amorim's plans. Obviously, there's Barcelona reportedly pushing for a deal, and Young goes on to talk about it, saying that he loved him since the first day that he trained with him in the first team. He's a fantastic player. You can't always just stay at Manchester United, and there's got to be a change. So quite a diplomatic sort of answer from him in that one. Talking about Sancho as, you know, a part of that group of 5 that are on the way out. The presenter references that group of 5 who don't fit into Amorim's plans. Jadon Sancho being chief amongst those. He didn't go in and sort of name check all 5, but he said they're good players, fantastic players that other teams would be playing, but obviously there's a reason Amorim isn't playing them. And then he says, as players, you just want to play football. Although that doesn't seem to be the case, and that's one of my things that's a massive drama. People sitting around on big wages still. He goes on to say they're probably telling their agents, please just let me get somewhere I can play. Well, I think actions speak louder than words, and I don't necessarily see that from a lot of the players that we're looking at. He says he was surprised they let McTominay go. Again, I think that was more of a board decision. It sounds like Eric Ten Hag fancied him. But he talks about him. He said he's extremely happy for him. He's a youngster that had hunger, desire, belief, one of the hardest working players I've seen. I think that's something that everyone says about Scott McTominay. And in hindsight, maybe it was a mistake letting him go, but at the time he went, there wasn't a starting place for him in the squad. I think that's my angle on that one, pretty much. All in all, he didn't really hold back in the interview, and I found myself agreeing with him for quite a lot of what he said. There was some sort of diplomatic answers in what he said, but the decline in post-Fergie is real, worse than anticipated. I wonder what percentage and impact the players themselves have had on it. Standards have dropped. I was always told it was the dressing room that led those standards. Yes, the manager can have an impact on that, but where's your leadership in the changing room that's dealing with that? The club's approach to transfers, as we know, requires a rethink. Spoken about some of the lads that he knows and that he played with and all in all, but I think it was a pretty good interview, to be honest. I think the amount of people that was tagging him in it, there's a bit of contradiction in the Rúben Amorim deserves patience, but it's now or never. A little bit of contradiction there, but I kind of get what he's saying. Either way, let me know your thoughts. And see, you thought that was going to be a character assassination, didn't you? But it wasn't. So, calm down. See you in the next one. Laters.